This keyframe dictates what she does when she stops moving. I'm having a bit of an issue with that particular piece of it, and I'll show you why. I believe it's because the character can either face left or right when playing on a two-dimensional plane, which is a brand new thing, so I'm going to have to mess around with it. But I believe it's because of that. When the player is only allowed to move left and right on a two-dimensional plane, for some reason. Okay. So, these are things I'm going to have to mess around with. No need to save. I didn't really change anything. I am going to go to another one of the creations that I have not showed before, simply because it is a two-dimensional project, and with that new two-dimensional quick, easy button, it fixes a lot of the problems that I ran into making it. So I'm going to first tweak the character way down there by her ship. I'm going to get rid of this piece of logic. There's a piece of logic here that you will see. What I'm doing is showing anything that's invisible, like you can see her gun effects there. This block with the microchip on it used to be the camera logic. It would follow the player anywhere in the level and keep the camera locked to the side, and that's how you had to make two-dimensional games in Dream's early access and beta. But now, because Media Molecule magic, there is the 2D button. Ta-da! Oh my god, this is so fantastic. Hold on now. Get rid of that. So this character was 100% hand animated by me. You can tell it was my first experiment actually with hand animation. It was also my first experiment with any kind of two-dimensional gameplay. I'm curious if it's possible to move the camera back at all, because that is ridiculously close for 2D. There has to be a way. Usually within the character setting and their logic, in this controller sensor here, if I scope into that, there's camera distance. So I want about 6 meters, and we'll see if that even makes a difference in 2D. It does not. Oh, yes it does. Awesome. Okay, so that's much better. This makes the game so much easier to develop two-dimensional games on. I do, however, have a concern that the character is moving closer to the foreground as she walks because of the way that I built the level. I don't see that happening now. That was my biggest problem when I was making this game, was that although I had her moving on this axis only, for some reason the level and her were not quite meshed. It was by maybe a degree, and that made the difference in controllability, because no matter what you would do, she would eventually walk off the front of the level, which, again, I can't tell if she's about to do. So I kind of wanted to make like a Metroidvania game with this, and of course it ends up being something like Metroid because it's in space and you're a female astronaut and blah blah blah. It ends up being a lot like Metroid. Again, all of this music was written in Dreams using the synthesizer in Dreams. That's every bit as powerful as any MIDI synthesizer I've ever used. And that's great. Okay, so I did put some time into developing this game, so it's got some gameplay aspects to it already. There are 2 songs playing right now, so I apologize. Now, I was hoping that would be fixed out of as you can see, when the character jumps, double jumps, when she lands, she does like this lean back thing that I have not quite figured out how to fix. So yeah, this the 2D button really makes a difference. But I can see for items. So when the character stops, they face the camera, which is something I'm sure that is totally tweakable and really not an issue at all. This will inevitably become a full-sized game. I apologize if the microphone is getting messed up here. I don't have my nice headphones set up at the moment, so this is what we're dealing with. So yeah, there's just a two-dimensional button now, which is, oh my god, I can't even tell you how exciting that is for me. I am going to go to another two-dimensional project I had because I had abandoned that one because, like I said, the two axes were just not meeting up. No matter what I tried to do, I couldn't seem to fix it. So I'm going to delete the logic here again, which follows the player on a two-dimensional plane. Woo. Yes, there are trophies, and yes, there is a platinum trophy for all of the people believing rumors and such out there. Scoping into the character here with L1 and square. I do use the DualShock 4 when I play Dreams. I do not prefer the motion controllers. For anyone that's curious, it is 100% playable without the motion controllers. Though I do know of a lot of people that vastly prefer those. I'm going to switch on two-dimensional movement and face the camera when idle. Okay, there it is. There's the tweak. So I don't want the character to face the camera when idle, and I'll show you why. So I just have a simple idle animation. I was really just messing around with tweaks here to learn about idle animations, and that is what you're seeing a result of. This is a custom run animation completely. None of this is the procedural animation or pre-programmed animation from Dreams. That is not to say in any way that this is a great animation or a fully thought out animation, but it was my first major experiment with custom animations. So yeah, the reason I came in here actually was just because that two-dimensional button. I just wanted to try that out and see how that felt. It's wonderful. I'm so excited. Let's see. I'm gonna actually go into music here for a brief moment because I want to see if any changes were made there. What I'm doing is I've just laid down a timeline, which is exactly what it sounds like. When I press play, the timeline begins. This is the end. This is the beginning. Timelines can be used for animations, anything really, anything you want to set up a sequence on, including music. So I'm gonna go into instruments here. Here are Media Molecules instruments. And it looks like, I'm gonna try not to blast these in you guys' face. There's a little snippet of every instrument as you go along. It is, that animation is terrible. Okay, so I came in here to see if perhaps there were any new instruments. It doesn't look like there are any. Oh, hold on. Nope, doesn't look like there are any new instruments, but that's okay. There's an unlimited number that can be shared in the Dreamiverse. So I'm just gonna paste the low whistle down, and then what I'm gonna do is scope into it with L1 and X, and this puts you into performance mode. All I'm doing is just holding a button, let's say square, which, as you can see down here, is mapped to D sharp. So when I press square, it plays a D sharp. These modify the noise you're making. Each of these is some sort of effect. If I scope out a little bit, I can see what the effect does. A fifth up, a fourth down, an octave up. This produces vibrato and depth, and this is shimmer. These options are not available on every single instrument. Every instrument is different. Whatever options are built into that instrument are there, but you can always add more. This is effect fields here, and that's what these little gadgets are. Those are effect fields that modify. If I scope into that, you can see all these dozens and dozens and dozens of different little tweaks that you can do to sound effects and instruments, and this is available on every single sound effect and instrument. So what you can get away with is quite impressive. If I just hit record, so that was just a quick, I think, little 4 measures there. See? So the timing is terrible, and I can just go back and drag the notes to the timing, whatever timing I want to make work. And then when the timeline plays, it'll play whatever you recorded. If you don't like the length of your notes because the pauses, you can extend them, shrink them, make them quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, whatever you want. It really is a hyper-intuitive music system. I went into it, like I said, just to see if there had been any changes to... Some of these sound effects are so loud. If there had been any changes to the instrument setup, which there are not. The game definitely feels like it's running a lot smoother than before. Yeah, not gonna save. I was trying to fix my Lara Croft's run because it is straight up beat right now. This little view here is all of my creations, and then right below that is all of the collaborations that I'm working on with other people. You can have a play later queue, which you can mark from the game itself, or you can actually go to indreams.me, which is the interconnected online service. It's like a website for Dreams that's live. It tells you analytics for your levels, all that type of stuff. You can go search for levels and put them into your play later queue from your phone or your PC or whatever. These are, there's all kinds of new stuff. So there's a lot of new elements from Media Molecule in here, so I'm pretty happy about that. I wonder if my zombies still walk properly. I hope so. Let's just find out. Okay. I mean, it's zombie shuffle. It's not like it's hard. They sway a lot. These zombies seem to sway a lot. It's fine. It's perfect. So when I started Dreams up this morning and it finished downloading, it told me right away that some of my creations are going to need tweaks to feel like they should again. I'm just going through some of my characters here. Ryan has a custom animation set up to run. This is my Zombie Apocalypse character, Ryan. He is the main character of my Zombie Apocalypse series. I was just checking his animation. So it seems that only really Lara, my Lara Croft animation, seems to be the only one that was heavily affected by the update here. So I'm trying to get to it. Hold on here. Okay. So her run is just not correct anymore. She's not running like Lara Croft. You can see here. It's not bad, but from a play perspective, when you're playing from behind, her run, while it's not terrible, right? Even from the side, she looks a little from the side. But here's my problem. Look at, that's her walk. I mean, it's not terrible. Her braid moves so much better. You can see little shell casings. It's really hard to see when you're playing the actual game, but you can see shell casings actually flying out of the guns when you fire. And they are physical, and they bounce off and hit, and they even make noises. But they're so tiny that it's really hard to perceive as the player. I'm going to actually go back into editing Miss Croft. Close her logic down. And I'm going to check. It's really her arms that drive me crazy when she runs. So, great thing here is that when you edit, I'm going to push play so we can see her. When you edit, you can edit walk, run, and... You can edit walk, run, and move separately. Let me see here. So that you can have individual animations for each of those. You don't want nearly... I mean, I do want the sass. I don't want the arm vigor. So I want her arms to move something more like that when she's walking. And even this. Why is she like... Walk, girl, walk. Alright, so she's got a bit of a... Oh, there we go. So I'm just removing the stompiness in her walk, which is exactly what my issue with it was. Now let's see if her run remains the same. So, in early access and beta, unfortunately, the run and the walk were tied together. So whatever animations I chose, it was a slow end of this and less exaggerated end of the spectrum of whatever setup I chose, and a very exaggerated and bloated setup of what I chose. So I'm gonna need her to do way more stride. Pick up the stride, girl. Pick up the stride. So let's see. When you did arm vigor in the beta and early access, there was more of a this to it. So a lot more of the backswing on the arm. And now it seems that she's more... I don't know how to describe it. The flail will actually have her swing her arms out to the side, which I do not want. Springiness. Just a second here. Let's see. All right, so... Oh, this is newly added. Anticipation, turn anticipation. So basically, what that does is make it so that Lara's head turns, which I can't express how exciting this is for me, because these are things that you had to self-program in the early access and the beta, and it's just not anymore. So you can see her head turning as I turn the controller, which was not something that the characters originally did. They were very stiff. Their bodies turned. Her feet self-fixed, which I love Media Molecule. I can't express how excited I am. All of the animations seem to blend together a lot better than they used to. And there's definitely some change in the level of detail in a distance now. You can see her face loses detail right. See, as I get closer, it seems to gain detail. It loses it right there. It just seems to blur out a little, which is not an issue at all. And will probably help to make the game run better. I am actually going to jump into... I'm going to save that. Hold on. Let me just save this creation. Before you exit any level or any work that you do, it stops you and makes you save, so you don't really have to worry about losing work unless you make a really stupid decision by accident. I'm going to go into my Lost Valley level and update... No, not Earthworm Jim. My Lost Valley level. There's a little bit of a pullback that wasn't there during the access and beta when you're surfing levels. I'm going to edit I'm going to update that Velociraptor, but I don't know why it updated. I'm going to update Lara Croft too. And I'm doing this because I want to see if there's been any alteration to how the game runs. I did put a ton of graphical detail into this level. Ooh, I hate her run now. I hate it. Gotta figure it out. I've gotta fix it. She looks so stupid. Oh my god, but she just controls so much better. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did my very best to make her as much alike as the original Lara Croft from the 1996 Tomb Raider as possible, while of course incorporating things like her braid. Okay, so there's too much shine of light through her upper half here. You can see her face. The light is just blasting right through it. So I need to reduce the waxiness on her sculpture, and it looks like her right leg is also too waxy, and her right arm. So some tweaks that need to be changed here. So I have a PS4 Pro and I have the game running in high frame rate mode. I have the game running in high frame rate mode right now, so it's actually running a lot better than it would on a standard PS4, and I think I can actually just change that on the fly. Hold on. Go to My Preferences, Display. Oh, this is different. Yeah, so there's higher resolution. So if I switch to higher resolution, this is more how the game would run on a regular PS4. And though the games are programmed to run at 60 frames per second, all of the dreams are made to run automatically at 60 frames per second. You, as the programmer, can obviously add enough to your levels and change enough to your levels to do what you want with the frame rate. My intention, of course, was not to slow the game down, but I built the game in high frame rate mode on my PS4 Pro without considering the implications on a regular PlayStation 4, and as a result, here we are. But the game doesn't run terribly, it's just not preferable. Okay, so I need to fix her head. Because her head did not. You can see the game is pretty, you know, I'm not a game developer, so I'm still learning. Alright, so I didn't want to spend this time playing my Tomb Raider level since I already did a whole video on my Tomb Raider level. I just wanted to see if the game just seems to run so much smoother on the dashboard that I was curious if there was any changes to the frame rate in-game. You can do two-dimensional animations in Dreams also. This is a character, his name is Stickman. How unique is that? These are just some basic animations I was creating for the gameplay. Idle animations, left and right running animations, idle jump, and left and right jump animations. But incorporating these into the game has proven to be a little more difficult than I anticipated. So, I'm still working on that. Let me see here. There was another, like, stupid little two-dimensional animation that I did just to mess around with the animation system. Here we are. And I'll just show that to you real quickly so you can see it. The characters don't have any heads. And they, of course, will have heads. I just haven't added those. So that is something that I will probably complete at a later date. These are all just things that I'm trying to do to try different things out in Dreams, which is part of what makes Dreams so amazing. The point is that you just trial and error. And like I said in a previous video, this game is really addictive. It's just, there's something about it. Hold on now, I have to answer this. Not sure if you heard any of that, possibly. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully. So this was another two-dimensional animation, two-dimensional character I was working on. Also Stickman. He is completely two-dimensional. The paint strokes on him are flat. Well, as flat as you can get on Dreams. I did this, actually, I did this by painting these strokes into a three-dimensional character model. And then making the character model invisible. Because you actually, at least in the beta and early access, you could not possess a two-dimensional painting. You can only possess three-dimensional object. So I cheated the system by doing that here. I'm going to remove this piece of logic, which in the previous two-dimensional game I was saying controlled the camera angle on the character, but in the new version of Dreams, in the launch edition here, that option is automatically available. So I'm going to preview invisibility so that I can scope into the character and turn on two-dimensional movement. That way, the character is two-dimensional no matter what. Obviously, again, I have to update character animations because that used to be a run, and the launch of Dreams made some changes to the characters and the characters' movements. The entire areas here have been completely overhauled. I mean, completely. This is wholly different, and you can see magically and as I expected. You never know, but as I expected, all of the characters from early access and beta carried over, and people are getting really, really good with these characters and character models. Fantastically, it looks like a lot of these characters' animations are unbroken, and that probably has a lot to do with the fact that many creators during early access and beta figured out how to do custom animations, and those would remain exactly the same from early access to launch edition. These recommended for you things are really, really cool because not only does Media Molecule have a fantastic grasp on the art style of its own game, so it can create things that look entirely unique to other people's dreams, but these can just be like dropped right into a level to be playable. I actually went into the creation, and what I'm going to do instead is start a new, fresh creation. I'm going to do a scene, and I'm going to go in here. So you go to search, and in the Dreamiverse, this button here, this is everything that's ever been released in Dreams. There is a story mode in Dreams that I've been very much enjoying so far. And as you play the story mode, it continues to, you get prize bubbles just like in Little Big Planet, and it continues to unlock more and more things built by Media Molecule. So I'm doing this because I'm showing you guys how simple it is to make your own levels in Dreams. It looks like the glowing here maybe is what these logic items are. I'm not sure. I've never really messed with the creations that Media Molecule made, but I wanted to show you how easy it was to make a level. So let's just say I take these creations and I plop them down. I don't know my sense of scale here, so and then I want to take my let's say Raziel character model. Gotta find him. This is Raziel from Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. He is somewhere away from the camera. There he is. Oh, I did not mean to bring that block into existence with him. So here we have Raziel from Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. And I'm just going to plop him down. You can set him anywhere, but when you press play, gravity's going to take over. Oh, So you probably, that's what the logic was. So you probably want to make sure that he's over something so when he falls. But see, I just plopped in, oh, he's going to need his, I guess that exits the level. That's a level exit. Who knew? Let me go back, reset, and play. So all the stuff you see happening here is logic built into that object that I've dropped into the level. I'm going to avoid that object so it doesn't end the level. I do need to, as I was saying earlier, update all my characters' animations because they're not correct anymore. They're all moving a little strange now. But yeah, you can basically... And even if you don't have a character created, if you've never created a character before, and you don't want to go, you know, into the Dreamiverse and find, let's see, if you go to categories and tags, and you're only looking for a character, then what it'll do, obviously, is only bring up characters. You can probably find anything here. There's another Raziel. Oh my god, I'm going to put him in here. Okay, so we have another person's Raziel character in here versus mine. There's the two Raziels against each other. But what I was saying is there are... That's hilarious. So there are, if you don't want to go into the Dreamiverse and collect a character and you just want to play test something you've put down real quickly, there's actually just a puppet you can just drop into the level. You don't have to do any tweaks on this character to make it playable. I have Raziel in here stealing. I have him set to automatically get possessed by the imp, so when you start the level. So you can see here, man, this character controls terribly. You will want to modify the character controls. This is motion controller doing this. You can, it's for puppeteering, for cutscenes and whatever else you choose to do when you're possessing your puppet. But you can just drop a basic puppet in here and play test what you've built really, really easily. And building is so easy. So I've made a copy of this by pressing L1 on it and holding R2. And then if I tap left, it makes copies of it. And you literally can just make worlds and levels so quickly in Dreams. And then playtest them just as quickly. Get that crazy Raziel looking creature. Man, even with this terribly controlling puppet, the controls are just so much more responsive and quick. I can't believe it. People are really gonna make amazing creations. I cannot imagine what people are gonna do in however much time is given. 2 months will be blown away. 3 months will be blown away. A year, I can't imagine. There will be full-size games in Dreams easily within a year. There already are because of early access and beta. But I would assume that some of these games are gonna take some tweaking in order to be regularly playable for regular dreamers. I'm going to get rid of all this. You can actually just highlight items. If you double click X, it highlights everything in the level. Exit that. I do not want to save that. I'll show you real quickly. I was walking you through just basic music creation earlier. I'm going to show you a piece of music that I created. This is called A Long Way Down. It's from Tomb Raider. It does play in my Tomb Raider Dreamake in the second half of the caves level. But as you play music, I don't know if any of you recognize this music. It's transposed from the original Tomb Raider, from Tomb Raider 1 from 1996, composed by Mr. Nathan McCree. So that's music. It works just like a timeline, just like an animation timeline. And animation is very, very simple in Dreams also. I will show you actually. So let's say I grab a puppet, a blank puppet, and I scope in L1 and X on his logic. Here is the DualShock 4 controller. These are the controls, or I'm sorry, outputs for every single button. Come on, close that. Every single button on the DualShock. Do not want to expand that. Has an output and an input so that you can, for example, say when it can be used or what the output does. So I'm just going to give you a super quick example of this. I take an animation keyframe. A keyframe is a single animation that can apply to as many objects as you would like. So in this case, it's going to apply to the character's arm. And he's going to do that. He's just going to hold his arm out in front of him. I'm going to take the scope out of that. So L1 and X, L1 and square to get into the controller sensor. And I'm going to say I want square to activate that keyframe. So when I go to play now, and I'm playing the game, when I press square, the character does exactly what I programmed in the keyframe. And it makes doing simple, quick actions very, very easy. More complex actions, like a swing, will take a more thorough understanding of the game itself. What I did here, I'm actually going to exit record so I can just walk you through what I did. I went into my gadgets here and I went to animate, and I picked a timeline, and I scope into that timeline, and I laid a keyframe down. And I'm going to go into that keyframe, L1 and X, and I'm going to, I don't want to, so scope into the character, and I'm just modifying his movements. It seems like the character movements are more responsive also, which is great. So I want the character to start in that animation. I'm going to stretch the length of the animation out, and what this is doing is along the keyframe here, you can see a timer, a timeline. This is a 1 second mark, obviously. What I just did was make this keyframe last about a second. If I grab this little ball at the top of it and I drag it back, it's going to slowly ramp up the animation when it plays. If I don't have that ball dragged, the animation will instantly snap into place. Watch. Oops. See how he instantly? Instead, I want that, and this is all tweakable within right here, but it's just easy to do it on the visual level. Now when it plays, see how he more kind of slowly went into that? I want him to move from that keyframe to this keyframe, and this keyframe is going to be the exact opposite of the previous keyframe. Right there. Now, what that's going to do is he's going to finish that keyframe, and then he's going to start that one. He's going to instantly snap because I didn't do any kind of blending, any kind of slow ramp up, and I'll show you why. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the center of the two keyframes here and push L1 and X, and what that does is blend the two keyframes. So now the character seamlessly, after that 1 second mark, is going to blend over the next 3 seconds into this keyframe, and then hold that keyframe for 1 second. Okay? So there are multiple types of blends. There's a slow ramp up, and you can adjust these curves. I'm going to leave it just default and show you the difference. You can see him slowly ramping up to a quicker animation. That's the exact opposite. This one is kind of a smooth blend both ways. He kind of like slows in the middle and then juts out at the end. And then we also have, oh, it looks like that's it. Okay, so there, I thought there were 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, there are only 4. Maybe there were 5 in the, no, there were only 4. So yeah, animation is just as easy as everything else is in Dreams. And the great thing about Dreams is that although it's easy to animate and to do, you know, whatever you want, it's approachable and simple enough, but has so much depth that people who are, oh, this is different. People who are game developers or who have spent more time with Dreams will find a depth that is just unmatched in anything that's not a regular development kit like Unreal Engine 4. This is different here, like a lot different. This used to be called run animation. This was jump animation. It looks like the run animation has been removed. Actually, oh my god. Oh my god. Genie. Nope, okay. So when the character is running, you can see, oh god, this is just, I'm gonna cry. This is so amazing. Oh, people are gonna just make amazing creations with this. The character continues to have the run animation built into their jump. So this is the character's actual jump, right? When the character's running, you can see, although it kind of looks cool that he does this, if he was in the air any longer, he would actually be producing the same run he's producing on the ground here. Sorry, I keep looking over at the stream versus the camera. He would produce the same, that huge stride that he's doing. That's what you're seeing being procedurally built into his jump. And it does end up looking great, but you can see sometimes it looks more like he's air running, like he's Luigi. So that is something that drove me crazy in the beta and early access. And I figured out a really, really quick workaround for that. In the Puppet interface, this used to be purple, so it took me a second. So I'm going to take another Puppet interface. Never mind. Here's a Puppet interface right here. This dictates what's happening with the character, with the puppet, as they're called in Dreams, with the character at any given moment. So you can see he's on the ground. He's jumping right now. When he jumps, idle strength. Oh my god. I just am so excited about this. This wasn't in the original one. This is distance from the ground. All of these things are sending out a signal as the puppet moves to let the player dictate what happens in that given second, moment, time frame. So running strength, what I liked to do was take a piece of logic called an AND gate, and what that did was say exactly what it sounds like. I will only output a signal when this and this are occurring. So what I want to do here is actually make it so that the running strength here happens only when the player is actually running. I don't want that wire anymore. And on the ground. So here's the on the ground output. You can see when the character jumps, it shuts off because the character is no longer on the ground. So there's no signal being put out. So when the character is on the ground and running, then the running strength will occur, or the running pose parameters will occur. I'm gonna tweak this. Yes. Okay, so that's why Lara runs all stupid. So I'm gonna tweak this. And this might make him run janky, but I'm trying to make it more exaggerated so you guys can see. Okay, so the character has this extreme stride. See how his arms are now like this because I placed it into that pose. The character has this extreme stride. And now, when he jumps, that stride is removed. What I did was make it so that this AND gate adds running strength when the character is running, and on the ground, then the character's running parameters, run pose, dictated by these little options here. All these dozens of options determine the character's run pose, as I showed you earlier. That's what this little animation is. This will only occur now when the character is on the ground, which is what I wanted because I don't like when the character jumps and the running animation continues in the character's jump. It looks terrible. I was really hoping that was something that they were going to make automatic in the launch version of Dreams, but they did not. So I'm hoping that a lot of people figure that out really quickly because it is something that makes a lot of the games feel floaty or similar, as I've heard people say. So you can see the character now jumps with the same animation, whether I'm stopped and jumping or running and jumping. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm going to go back into edit mode. And I'm just going to go through everything real quickly to see if there were any changes made to any of this. The UI itself looks like it's a little sharper, a little clearer. Ooh, what's this? Okay, so the camera will just try to... So, I'm kind of just going through things as my mind thinks of things that could have changed or been made easier for me as a Dreams developer, I guess is what we are. When I made Jin, when I made this top-down RPG, which is still hugely in progress, I'm just going to show you it real quickly. I'm going to show a little bit of gameplay for it. Oh my god. Oh yeah, that's right. The river pushes you. So I'm just showing a little bit of gameplay first so that I can go in and show you the logic behind it. Okay, I've got to finish this. I put so much time into this. Okay, so... Whew. All right, so each of these little squares has a trigger zone on it. And what a trigger zone does is it's a zone that is triggered by whatever you choose. In this case, I want it to be a possessed controller sensor, which basically means the character that you're controlling. So when you walk into this zone, this camera activates, right? So what I had to do was for every single square, see all these squares, for every single one of these squares, I had to put a camera and a trigger zone. So what I did was I built a square, put a trigger zone on it, put the camera the distance that I want, tweaked the camera how I wanted it, and then copy pasted that as a singular group all over the level. You can see this level is actually quite massive, as is most of this game that I was building. I did show this in an earlier video that I made, trying to just showcase it as a top-down RPG. I got really frustrated with the game itself because I could not get what's called persistent health to carry from dream to dream, or level to level to level, part to part to part. And that kind of defeats the purpose of increasing your maximum health and having health, really, if you can just reset it every time you move to another area. Hi. So, he has full health right now, so his attack releases a magic flourish, I guess is what you'd say. Let's see. I really do need to finish this game. It's going to be massive. Heavily inspired by Zelda and A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening and Defenders of the Oasis and all those top-down adventures of old. I'm actually, I don't want to mess with my Lara Croft anymore on the stream as much as I'd love to. I'm not going to. I can save that for when people aren't on here so that you aren't seeing a repeat of stuff that I've already showed. But I do want to fix Lara Croft's animation really bad before the launch of Dreams, which thankfully gives me 3 days to fix what I want to fix with it before you can all play it and destroy it with your reviews. It does look like the Zombie Apocalypse Saga didn't really change at all, which is stupendous because that means I don't have to really do any additional work on it before the launch of Dreams. I'm gonna skip this because you guys can experience the story for yourself. I don't want to ruin the story here on my stream. But yeah, it looks like this game actually did not lose controls at all. No, it looks great. In fact, oh yes. In the early access and the beta, when I would roll, it would... So Dreams is really smart when it comes to animation systems because what it does is it procedurally blends your animations together for you, which is something that game developers have been working on doing for years and years and years with regular games and have been successful in doing so for a couple generations now. Dreams does it, automatically for you. So while that is absolutely fantastic, okay, so the game definitely looks better. It looks much better. Like much better. Wow. Graphically, they've certainly made huge changes. So, what I was saying was, when I would roll, when the character Ryan would roll forward, his legs would get really stuck, is the best way. Is it possible for players to save the... Almost they start. So, it is possible for a developer to make the game so that players can save their progress and continue their adventure where they left off. Dreams does do a decent job of keeping that pre-built into the game, and I'll show you what I mean. When I exit here, when I exit the game, you can see this reset progress option. If I go into continue, although it started me back at the beginning of the dream that I'm in because I don't do checkpoints in this particular game, it still skipped the opening cutscene and all of the opening parts that I built into the game. So it automatically saves your progress as you go on every single dream that you play to infinity that I've seen so far. But as a creator, you can make it even more complex and literally save everything down to the character's inventory and variables like that are different with each game. All of those can be programmed to be saved permanently. Everything seems to be running a lot better as far as the programming itself in the game goes. I have idle animations on the character Ryan here. This is Ryan for Zombie Apocalypse. You can see when I stop moving, he starts producing idle animations. The thing that I was running into during the Dreams beta and early access is there is one where he does like this. You'll see it here in a moment. There's a couple of different idle animations. There's that one where he kind of grabs his shoulder, and then there's... I'll show you the one. He looks around. I don't have any choice over which one plays because I randomized it. That's him holding his gun up. I wanted to make him like shifty-eyed and a little crazy. So I'll just run through it so I can tell you. Basically what would happen was when that animation would play and a zombie would approach, or you'd go to hold your gun up, the animation would not stop stop playing. And no matter what I seemed to do in programming it, that was an issue that stuck. It fixed itself in the actual launch edition of Dreams. So that is absolutely amazing and wonderful. I'm so happy. This was actually the first creation that I made using other players. Yes, I did, Bill. Thank you. I created this during the beta, actually. For the first 3 weeks of the beta, I didn't have access to the Dreamiverse, so I didn't have access to other players' assets or tutorials or anything like that. And I built the Tomb Raider remake using exclusively my own assets as a result of that. I built Zombie Apocalypse right after I got access to the internet features because I wanted to, like, I didn't make this lamppost or those cones. I did do the rubble, but that's simple. I did do the street lights. I didn't do any of the buildings up here. I don't. Just kidding. I didn't do any of these assets. I borrowed them all from the Dreamiverse, which is part of what makes Dreams amazing. Anyone can build games and levels and platformers and sports games and multiplayer games and whatever you want fairly quickly because people are releasing, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of assets out there already. And I'm telling you that there has not been, the surface has not even been scratched on what people will be able to do and make. But the graphics are significantly so much better than in the early access and in the beta. They've really tightened things up and polished a lot. So all of this is pretty simple. All I did was drop a puppet in that I made look like a zombie right here that approaches you, and when I shoot at him, I just placed a single keyframe to make him, you know, this is one keyframe, this is one keyframe, this is one keyframe. And so when I pull the trigger on the gun, each one of those keyframes are randomized to make it look like he's getting struck by a bullet. And when you get too close, they swing on you. Wonderful. Wonderful. So this was the first thing that I created in Dreams using other players' assets. By this time, though, I had a fairly basic understanding of a lot of the logic and tools that are offered in Dreams. I went through a couple weeks ago and updated a lot of the zombie models and randomized some other things to give more of a variety to the game. Yeah, the sound effects even sound better and clearer. I actually have been building Zombie Apocalypse Chapter 3, and I'm actually doing that. Oh, I did not know there was a zombie behind me. I'm doing that as a live stream, and I will be doing that at a future date, and I'll let everybody know about that. What you guys are seeing is my Zombie Apocalypse level. It is not possible for you to find ammo simply because I didn't understand the logic behind doing that then. However, I may go back and add that simply because it's not as complicated as I thought, and I know how to do it now. So yeah, I will probably make it so that there is a finite amount of ammo and make it so that you have to find the ammo. The amount of time that it took me to make this Zombie Apocalypse, I will say first, was probably about 10-15 hours. I have spent a considerable amount of time going back and tweaking it, and I really like to bring updates to my levels and to my other Dreams. So when I learn something new in Dreams, I like to go back to my old creations and implement that myself into other dreams. Just to make them feel better, make them feel updated, and I don't know, it's just an enjoyable aspect of dreams for me. The second zombie apocalypse chapter, which I'm headed toward right now, Jumping Zombie. Yes, the graphics are so much better. And I didn't intend to go realistic on Zombie Apocalypse, so it does look intentionally intentionally cartoony. I didn't want to go with realistic graphics, but I will show you guys here in a moment an example of some pretty realistic graphics in Dreams. You can create some graphically demanding and impressive games in Dreams. This level took me probably 30 to 40 hours to design. I'm actually going to switch back in my preferences to frame rate. This one took me a lot longer, not only because this level is significantly larger and I did a lot more with atmosphere and sound effects, but I also made things interactive. Players... Yes, so that's your choice, though. You decide to relaunch the update when you're ready to relaunch the update, so you can actually tweak your once you've released a game, a dream, you can make as many tweaks to it as you want, because whatever you released into the world is what is in the world. That's what is out there until you decide to make the change. So right now, if I go into this game and start making edits, if I start changing things in this dream and moving things around, the people that are out there in the world will not be able to see those changes. They're not live. I will have to re-release the game, which really is it's just like releasing a patch in regular publishing. So what I'll do is just re-release the game, and it just basically pastes over the previous release of the game. You don't lose any of your playtime or the people that played or anything like that. It all sticks around. So yeah, you can make updates to your dreams. It is your decision when you release those updates into the world. So your choice when they go live. I did a lot with the atmosphere and the sound effects in this game, randomization and things like that. And like I said earlier, everything is interactive. So this one probably took me 30, 40 hours. A lot of it is made with other assets, other player assets. The controller does vibrate and react, and you can choose all of that. Literally, you can modify anything and everything that you desire to. I won't spend too much more time in Zombie Apocalypse, simply because I don't want to completely ruin it for people that may want to play it, as I would love for you guys to experience this. It is ready for play upon release of Dreams in 3 days. It's called Zombie Apocalypse, or if you're looking for the overall story, it's called the Zombie Apocalypse Saga. I will continue to modify this game and update it. You can see actually one of his animations did get a little messed up in the actual launch of the game. He's wading through water here, and he's usually doing more like this. So that's something that I'll have to update. Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love Resident Evil and zombies, and that's actually why my name is Cannibal, is because of Resident Evil. When I was a kid, well, teenager, to age myself. When I was a teenager and Resident Evil came out, I was just starting to get into LAN parties, which was how you played online back before there was sufficient bandwidth to play online. You would literally link your computers together, and we would play Quake at my high school. all the time together, and that was my name, was Cannibal, because I love zombies. And that has been my name for, man, 20-something years now in games. Thank you. I tried to go really heavy on the atmospherics in this one, simply because although it's a comedic series, and I went very comedic and cartoony with the art style. As you can see, the zombies are like cartoony. Although I went cartoony with the art style, I still wanted to give it a good atmosphere. I still, as an artist, I very much enjoy atmosphere. Yes, exactly. It was the way to go back then. So all of the noises that you're hearing, actually, the male zombie voices are me just going, oh, and randomizing. As you can hear, that was the exact same sound as the zombie made. And I made, I don't know, 7 sounds and randomized those to the zombie. So you can hear, this guy doesn't want to talk to me, that the zombies actually make multiple noises. For Christmas, I was up with my nieces and nephews, and I recorded my nieces. I had all 3 of them. I just recorded them on my phone. Just make random, like, gurgly zombie noises, and then I randomized those into the female zombies. So that is the female zombie noises are my nieces. You can use anything as a sound effect in Dreams, and there are hundreds and hundreds of modifiers that you can use with your sound effects to change them and update them and really get away with whatever you want. I did not make that electricity hurt the player, but the fire in the previous level does burn Ryan. It does kill him. There are only 5 or 6 zombie models that I made for Zombie Apocalypse right now. I will probably go in simply because it's just enjoyable to take a zombie model and mess with it and tweak it to make something different, and it's really easy to modify what you've already created. So I'm going to scoot back so I can get some light. It's really easy to modify what you've already created. So what you're seeing right now is one huge level, but the part with fire earlier, oh, there's a zombie. The part with fire earlier was another level. So this is a 2-part series right now. The 3rd part that I'm building right now is going to be broken into multiple parts because it's a huge neighborhood, and I realized pretty quickly into building it that I am not going to have the space that I need graphically and gameplay-wise to build the size of level that I want to build. The zombie likes to climb over the cafeteria tables here. So this part, ever since I entered the sewers, all of this has been a single level. But the huge city part before that was not a single level. And I did, like I said, I tried to make everything as interactive as possible. So although it's simple interaction, and I might do voice acting for it later, but obviously the character has a different ethnicity than I do, and I don't think I should get somebody to voice it that's the same ethnicity. Plus, I've got a couple people in mind that I'd like to have voice it. You can see, like I said, everything is really interactive. I tried to make it as interactive as possible, while maintaining that gameplay level, that gameplay thermometer. And the thermometers are actually pretty intuitive, and they do let you get away with a lot in Dreams. So what you're seeing is I have maxed out the graphics and gameplay thermometers in this. There is much more to the level, though, than I'm showing you. I'm not showing a lot of the interactions. You can really interact with everything from the cabinets to these empty shelves to the papers on the table, the computers back there, the TVs. Each one has a different statement when you try to manipulate it. I'm gonna just wade through this water and get out of here. Maybe I will just play through this level real quickly. But please give this game a try when you get Dreams. If you do decide to pick it up on February 14th, it's possible to build an inventory. Yes. I know that this sounds cliche at this point, but if you can think of it, you can build it in Dreams. It's a matter of figuring out how to do so. Players have really figured out how to do inventory systems very well. So that is something that is possible. Is there loading time from level to level? So, Media Molecule made this awesome level linking system in Dreams where if you have a single dream and you have multiple levels placed into that dream, as you play this level, this one is loading. So when I move to the next level, the most I've ever had to wait for a game to load is about 3 seconds. Yes, I will absolutely show some sculpting. Here, let me just... This poor guy is obliterated with his intestines and his bones showing. I will exit Zombie Apocalypse now and move to some sculpting for you guys, since that has been requested. All of this was sculpted by hand. I also sculpted the character and everything by hand. People's sculpting abilities with this game have absolutely blown me away. You can always go in and modify your sculpts and change them, and I love sculpting in Dreams because once you've done something, you can always manipulate it and modify it and change it. I'm going to get rid of this floor here. So I'm just going to start with something basic, like a square or a cube. And we're in three-dimensional space here. And I'm going to stamp it down. And now sculpting, I'm going to stick with the square just to show you. I use the motion control function of the controller, which a lot of people didn't like. They did make an option that allows you to remove motion control completely from your sculpting, or you can use the move controllers. A lot of people that are really artistic sculptures like to sculpt out of it as though it's clay, and I certainly understand the appeal behind that. And in a future stream or video, I will be going back to the moves to give it a try now that the actual game has launched. Because I will say definitively that the controls, as far as the motion control function of Dreams, have been significantly overhauled and are, 100% responsive. It feels there is no wiggle or jitter to the movement at all. So basically, I'm just going to start cutting out of this sculpt just to show you sculpting. You can see that exactly what I cut out of the sculpt is what comes out of it because I'm using the cube. You can change the color of your cuts and your sculpts. So let's say I want yellow. I tapped the touchpad here. That's the shortcut to the color palette. I want a really bright, almost like piercing yellow. Now all the cuts that I make in the sculpt are going to be yellow. Let's just switch to green just for contrast purposes. So you can see I'm changing the sculpt here. I can also add any shapes that I want. I'll switch to sphere and remove from your sculpts. Another really cool thing about Dreams is, so this is a single sculpt here, right? I can manipulate this as a piece of asset in the world. It automatically has collision detection with all of its surfaces, so the player puppet will run into that as a three-dimensional object. If I scope in, I can actually manipulate any of the things I've already laid down. So this is a sphere that I already laid down, and I'm just moving it around. Or I can just delete it and keep all the sculpts that I've done. So I see Bill asking for blend down there, and I'll show you what that is. So I'm going to switch back to sphere here. And if I press L1 in square, it allows me to edit the shape that I'm using here. When I'm on stamp, so there's stamp, right? So I'm stamping. And then there's smear, which allows me to draw as a smear. You cannot blend if you're smearing like that. No matter what you do, it'll just smear like that. If you switch to stamp, then if I go into edit, you can see this new option up here. This is called a blend. What this does, you can see that these two, the sphere here and the square that I built, these are one asset. When I start to mess with this blend, which is a slider, you can see the two shapes blending there. So now, wherever I move the sphere, it's gonna blend automatically with that object. This is really, really cool when it comes to sculpting. It allows you to shape very easily. So I'm going to change the color just so that you can see what I'm laying down here differently. The color will also blend. You can see the color blending in. The larger the object, the more of the previous object's color it consumes. The further away from the object, the more of its own color it is. So blend is really cool because what it does is blend the objects together, the shapes together. I like to use this for rocks, and I'll show you. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to show you a blend with rocks. I'm going to make a rock real quickly. Nope. Sculpt. Yes, that was soft blend. So I'm going to show you something with soft blend real quickly. I like to use the hexagon for rocks just because it looks like a natural shape. This does not look like a natural rocks right now. And I'll show you what I like to do to change that. I switched to blend there. I like to add blend back in. And then if I flick the touchpad, whichever direction I flick the touchpad, the icon starts spinning. And then you can just lay down parts into your sculpt that automatically blend with the sculpt you created. You can see all of the things, all of the shapes that I stamped down before. This is how I like to create rocks. Simply because it gives it a cool texture. And that's really what soft blend is all about. You can also subtract while you soft blend, which is exactly the same in reverse. And you can get just really any shape you desire out of these blends. It's so cool. It's just such a cool feature. And then when you scope in, any of those things you've laid down already have soft blend applied to them. So if I move them within the shape, because let's say this one was sticking out like that and it made it very obvious that I put a hexagon there, so I want to move it into the shape some. If I scope into that shape, you can see as I drag my imp is my cursor, my little green lion there. As I move my cursor around, all the shapes that I've laid down are there, and I can manipulate those all independently of the shape. And it automatically moves that soft blend for me. So you can create things so quickly. And then what was the second question? Pasty? What were you seeing? Hold on, let me scope back in, because I'm assuming you saw something here that you were asking about. But yeah, so you can manipulate the shapes individually that you've already laid down, which is a great thing about Dreams, because once you've laid down a shape, it's not definite. You can go in and mess with your sculpts unlimitedly. And I saw on Twitter the other day that somebody had actually reached the capacity of the amount of shapes that you're allowed to put into a single item, and it was something like 18,000 shapes into a single item. So that's insane. Soft blend and so maybe what you're thinking of is impasto. You remove the backside of the shape to save space of graphics. Okay. So this is what makes the Bubble Bath engine different than other engines. What you'll want to do instead of removing the backside, so if I were to just do this, right, and remove the backside of the item to save on graphics, while that will help sometimes, I can copy this shape something like 25,000 times to create a level, right? I'm making just thousands or hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies. Well, right now it's probably in the tens, but let's say hundreds and hundreds of copies. This is not eating up any more graphics. See how it says graphics memories here? Graphics memory? It's not eating up any more data. What it's doing now is eating up gameplay. Now, the reason that I'm telling you this is because, to answer your question, if I want to remove detail on the back side of this, when I start cutting out of this, you know what, hold on. I'm going to turn on my thermometers right now. So show and hide my thermometers. So you can see my thermometers active right here at all times. Here we have one sculpt that I've done a ton to. Now watch that graphics, that yellow bubble down in the lower left corner. See how it added 4%? That's because now we have two completely different objects in the level, and now I can copy and manipulate this one 10,000 times in each level. Now, the reason that I'm telling you that is because instead, what you'll want to do is, let's say this is the object that I want my character, this is the ground. This is my dangerous ground to run around on. I want to vary the level though. I don't want it to all look the same using this. So I can twist that and put them together to increase the level, and that doesn't actually add to the graphics meter at all. The reason that I'm saying this is because the backside of it should be sculpted. Okay, here, let me show you. I'm gonna take a cube, right? A cube has 6 sides. Each of those 6 sides, I'm going to do something a little bit different than the last. Here, I'm gonna do a triangle. Here, I'm going to do a sphere. Here, I'm going to do a cone. Here, I'm gonna do a cylindrical shape. And I'm just cutting out of the square. And Bill, I will show you the impasto thing here in just a moment, which is actually textures. It's the best way to say textures in Dreams. And I actually learned something really cool about them the other day that gives a different flavor to Dreams. And then I'm going to do a donut on this side. The reason that I'm showing you this is because instead of getting rid of the backside to save on memory, what you should do is sculpt different things in each side. This is for world building. Sculpt different things in each side of the single sculpt, right? So that when I copy and paste it and I'm not taking up any more memory, now I have a different object laid down every single step, but it's the same object. It's not taking up any additional memory. So instead of cutting out the backside of something, sculpt the backside of it so that you can flip it to use in the level without eating up any additional memory. Because if I want to make a city, right? I'm going to just do the most basic building you've ever seen in your life. I want to build a city, right? And I want there to be different buildings. Now, if I do this, I'm just going to make terrible windows here real quick. There's a really easy way to do this. I'm going to lay down a square. I'm going to copy the square. I'm going to copy the square again, drag it all the way to the bottom, and then produce dozens of copies in between. Perfectly straight, automatically aligned along whatever grid you decided, and real time. So we have a building, right? And this building, I'm going to delete these so that we see how much graphics. This building is taking up 4% of the graphical memory. Okay, so that sounds like a lot. There is a really cool thing in tools here that allows you to reduce the detail on your sculpture. Look at that, down to 1%. Now, when you get close to it, you can see that it certainly has lost details. What's called impasto, Bill, what you were asking about. The impasto, which is the texturing on the polygons on the 3-dimensional object, increases in size as I reduce the detail. See that happening? Not only that, but these squares, these intricately cut, like perfectly cut squares here, are also reducing in detail. I'm not changing the color. What it's showing is the bluer an object is, the less graphical detail it takes up when you're in this sculpture detail mode. The more red an object it is, the redder, I guess is the word, the more it takes up. You can see those windows really, really turning sharp as I do that. So here we have a building taking up 5% of the graphics, right? I want to make a city, and I'm like, blah, blah, making city. Suddenly, I realize every single building looks the same. So I take this sculpt, and I want to change the windows on it. Okay, I don't like any of the windows on here. So I remove these windows. Now, you can see I've already added 3% graphics to the level here. And it's important for what I'm trying to show you to note that. So this is now it's just a cube. Thank you. I have spent a year with this game, so I have a significant amount of time in sculpting. As an artist, I have become rather addicted to sculpting. So here we just have a basic cube, but it is still eating up more than half of the graphics that one is eating up. So instead of building I'm going to do this first just to show you. I'm going to edit the shape and extend the square here because I want long windows now. And who cares if they're placed correctly? This is just for show and tell. I'm going to extend the shape because I want a different looking building here. So I'm going to change the shape, right? Now what that's done is I've now eaten up 9% of the graphical memory in the level, in the entire dream, with just these buildings. And actually, if I remove these buildings, it's still 9%. The amount of copies in a level of something does not increase the graphical demand on the level, which is amazing and allows you to create one object and copy it tens of thousands of times to create a level. So I want a varied looking city, but I don't want to. Now I'm going to make another building, right? And I don't want this one to show, it's just a sheen surface. I don't want it to have any windows. And now all of a sudden we're up to something like 14 or 15% graphics eaten. And I haven't really, 13%. So I haven't really done anything. I haven't built anything and I'm at 13%. The reason for that is because a single sculpt is what's eating up the graphics. So instead, to make a unique looking a unique looking city, I'm going to build a different building into each side of this building. Oh, that's too deep. Just ignore the building, the way the building looks. I'm not trying to make it pretty right now. I'm just trying to show you guys. So I'm going to build, let's do, I don't know, something completely different on this side. Let's do some spheres sticking out, some bumps. Then I'm going to grab that, drag it down, align it where I want, and just make some copies of it. And now I'm going to, in this side, we'll do some donuts. I know that buildings don't actually have any of these features. I don't care. Copy, and we'll just do 2 of those. Okay, so now you have this building. Uh-oh. That is supposed to be connected to the building. Great thing is about dreams, I can just push that shape back to wherever I want it once I've looked at it in a 3-dimensional space. You can always move and manipulate shapes you've set up. So now we have a 5% graphics building that I'm going to copy several times. Right? That still has not eaten up any of the gameplay. I just copied that, 20 times? And it hasn't eaten up any of the gameplay. And still, 5% of the graphics. The reason that I say to do that is because now I can take each of these buildings I apologize for my work tongue. I'm really terrible about sticking out my tongue while I do art, and I get made fun of for it all the time. So here we have... no, because they are an individual sculpt. So nothing in Dreams will automatically have physics applied to it. It's not like Little Big Planet in that way. You have to tell the game that you want physics applied to it. So here we have a donut, okay? It's kind of a messed up donut, but it's a donut. If I push play, nothing happens. Yes, exactly. I tricked the memory. And that's what the Bubble Bath engine is all about, is all these little tricks. You can make a level. I mean, I went into my Tomb Raider Lost Valley level and added probably 1,000 rocks. And I took them, I made all these rocks, and I just sprinkled them throughout the level. I'll show you that real quickly here after I show you physics. So here, you can see the icon up in the upper right corner here is play, and the donut is not moving. The donut is not doing anything. The donut is not physical in space right now. None of the objects you create in Dreams are physical in space to anything but the player. The player will automatically collide with everything. You can shut that off though, okay? So I'll show you. Now I want the donut to react to these buildings, and I want it to collide. So L1 and square to zoom into the properties of this sculpture, and yes, there are this many properties and modifications to every single item, object, sculpt, audio, everything in Dreams. So here's the physical properties of the dream, indicated by that little thing, that non-stop thing. So the item is already collidable, right? What that means is that exactly what it sounds like. The object will collide with a player or another object unless you tell it not to. See how it's not doing anything for me right now? Yes, exactly. So now, movable. Now it's reacting, and the great thing is physics are pre-built into objects in Dreams, but you can manipulate those physics as much as you want. So this object weighs 542.94 kilos. I can choose to ignore the gravity, which will make it so when I press play, it does not move, but it will still be collidable. So it will still push around the level, but the physics being automatically calculated if the object, for example, a character who weighs significantly less than 500 kilos, it presses against that object, the object will produce far more force back against them, won't allow them to push. You can also make objects have more or less friction. This is a super enjoyable slider right here, because if you make an object physical, oh, don't ignore gravity. See how it kind of, it's a blob now. It's blobus. You can make like slime creatures, and you can see its own weight pressing down on its body to flex its body. So there is actually deformation in Dreams, despite what I agree 100%. And the fact that this game is only $40 is just blowing my mind. I cannot believe that. You're literally getting a full gameplay a full game with a gameplay engine that does anything and everything you want, from racing to action to platforming to sports to multiplayer to anything you want. For $40 is beyond me. So yeah, the weight of the object automatically applies. You can determine how much physics cost is being applied to the object here. The more you do, the more the object will act like it's supposed to in real life. You can see the body flexing downward as I hang it on the corner there. And Music Creator, yeah. And the Music Creator is every bit as intuitive and powerful as anything I've ever used. And I own a music school. So while I'm not saying I have access to everything, every like Sibelius and all that stuff, it's every bit as intuitive as those, and more so, far more user-friendly than those in particular are. So if I increase the density, I'm increasing the weight of the object itself here. It's now 10,900 kilos versus 0.014 here, which is almost, see the weight hardly affecting it. As I increase the density, the weight affects it. Once you get past the 50% portion of the slider, the density will actually start to appear to reduce. What's happening is that the weight of the object, because it's so dense, is no longer causing as much flexion as it had before. So that's all you're seeing. So yeah, physics do exist in dreams. You have to tell the game that you would like to utilize the physics since they do eat up gameplay to some degree. Although, as you can see, I still am only at 1%, as this is not really a very complex object. They do eat up gameplay, so you'll want to use physics on objects that you only want to use physics on. They are, by default, off. I'm just going to mess with the density here so that we can see the body flex in other ways, because it does react to gravity. So this is really cool for, yeah. I will actually show you real quickly. No, actually, I made a slime, a blob enemy that bounces as he comes towards you, and he ended up looking really cool because of this feature. I was going to show you guys how I did rocks in the Tomb Raider level, and I'm just going to real quickly make like a grassy knoll, just so that I can show you how I did rocks real quick, because I just fell in love with this technique. So I'm going to make this rather simple. I'm just going to stamp down a square, and then I'm going to use the stretch tool to just increase the size of it. And I'm doing that because I'm going to shape it a little bit to make sure the rocks don't go all over the place, because I don't want them to. I'm actually going to stretch this down some so I can make some divots. So here we have this grassy knoll, and Bill, I will show you Impasto right now. And the reason it's really cool. Impasto is cool because it helps creators quickly texture their worlds. I like to do something I've recently discovered. So looseness in an object here, if I zoom into this sculpture, the looseness is increasing the size of the flex. That's the flex. This is Impasto. So Impasto makes those flex three-dimensional. Now, the flex have a texture to them, and this is hard for you. I mean, you can see it very obviously, but it's much easier to see. I'm going to lay down a gadget here to manipulate the where the sun is real quickly, and I'm doing that so that the sun is on the horizon, so you can see light reflecting off of the sculpt here. I'm doing that so that you can see the Impasto much easier. You can also change the shininess of the. Oh wow, the lighting looks so much better. Yes. You can change a lot of the way the textures reflect. This actually makes light shine through the object. You can see the object is solid, or waxy is what Dreams calls it. So that allows light to shine through it. So Impasto increases it basically makes those three-dimensional, right? If I reduce Impasto, now we have a sheen, like flat, perfectly flat surface. If I increase Impasto, we start to get textures in there. I'm going to go into my modes here and go to style mode. And what I'm going to do is change the flex to, I like Baroque a lot for grass, or streaky. I'm going to do streaky today. So then I'm just going to go over to my sculpt here, which is highlighted. You can see the edges highlighting. Yes, exactly. So textures are kept to a minimum. But you can paint your own textures as much as you want. I have done so much paint in a level that I caused it to slow down, but I will tell you that it was in the thousands and thousands of strokes. So you can texture map your levels personally as well. This is just a quick shortcut to giving it more of a three-dimensional texture. The paint strokes that you apply to things can also be made three-dimensional as well. So you can make three-dimensional strokes as well. Yes. So I'm going to select the grassy one here, and I'm going to hold R2. And now when I change Impasto is different for every single fleck. So when I change Impasto on this, what it makes it do is rise that grass, really just paint strokes, up out of the ground, right? So now we have grass, but it's dull, dead grass, and I want it to look more like grass. So I'm going to go back into this sculpture's properties with L1 and square, and I'm going to do effects, and here's wave, which does exactly what it says, and I'm going to make that wave. So now when I press play, I have grass. I have windy grass. I have very docile grass. I can make my grass evaporate. I can make my grass throb. I can make my grass flow. I can make my grass boil. I can also mix and match. If I want to make it look like there's a bit of a wind flow, and you can actually make real wind. Yeah, it's so amazing to be able to do all of this in real time. So let's say I want a mix of several of these. I like the way wave and flow looks. Just maybe to give it a really quick and easy appearance of wind rolling through the world. But again, you can actually apply physics to paint strokes. If I want, let's say, a piece of crabgrass, and I go in, I want to paint it. Oh. So I go to modes, go to paint. I am going to use a square for this. I'm going to copy this green, and I'm going to just make it a little darker. I'm just doing this really quickly to show you that you can apply wind. I'm going to just draw. I know that's the largest, jankiest grass you've ever seen in your life. But I'm going to apply physics to this stroke. And the reason for that is because now wind automatically factors in. The stroke is automatically attached at the leg. See it moving around? It's physical now. It's reacting to what I'm doing. Yes. You can add a gadget to your character called a force applier. What that does is apply force to anything that they approach within a certain distance. So if this paint is physical, which it is right now, as you can see when I move it, it's reacting to physics. If a force applier is on your character, it will actually part. And you'll see that in the story mode utilized a lot. A lot of dreamers out there like to use it also. It does really give the foliage a lot of life. But if you have physics on in your paint, it definitely increases the amount of memory. You won't physically see it eating up memory here. That's the thing. As you add paint like this, I'm gonna try to really slow it down here on purpose. So you can clone things automatically, just with the click of a button, from a center or from a. You can make them come all over or come all around the camera, or inside a sphere. I'm gonna do it on a plane just so they stick to that grass area, and then I'm gonna increase the amount of copies. See, that's not even slowing it down at all. Yeah, it starts to stress on the CPU when the paints are physical. When they are not physical, it doesn't really eat up memory nearly as quickly, but the game will actually produce a little red symbol right here where my imp is showing above your thermometer that says slow down. It shows a little snail, or it'll say there's too many physical paints to allow them all to run at once, so it's only gonna apply physics to the ones within a certain vicinity, or it will shut off animations from a distance. The game is pretty intuitive about running as best as possible while you work with it. So here's wind. I don't want the grass to be too floppy, so I'm going to turn down the floppiness. I want it to be a little stiff versus floppy. And then I'm going to just start to turn the wind up. All of these paint strokes will react exactly the same at exactly the same time because it's a single paint stroke force copied. But if I were to make my individual copy of it, I could manipulate each of these individually on how they react to the wind. And then I'm going to make this one really floppy so you guys can see floppy. But I did come in here to show you guys my rock technique that I was talking about a little earlier. So you can see you can make paint strokes physical also, and you can really get as detailed with paint. I can't even grab that one because he's whipping around so much. I'm gonna pause. So you can get super detailed with the paint strokes there. So what I saw a technique that another dreamer made or figured out to make things look super real, because I was basically, when I was making worlds and I was trying to make more realistic worlds, when I was building a rock, I'm just going to make a quick rock here. So this is a rock. I know it doesn't look like a rock yet. I will manipulate it some. I'm going to turn up the blend amount here and then do that spin that I showed you guys earlier with just a flick of a touchpad. You'll see, there you go. And then I'm just going to lay down some shapes in there. Okay, so here we have just, right, it's just a basic rock. I'll just do some cuts in it so that some sides can look unique. All right, so here we have this rock. What I was doing was individually taking these rocks and placing them and spinning them. Oh my God, and it was taking me hours and hours and hours. I know this game seriously has everything you want if you ever wanted to create anything in your life. I don't even find myself painting or drawing anymore because this game has taken over as my primary medium for my art, my primary outlet for art. It really has. So here we have a rock. What I like to do is take this same rock, copy it, right, and shrink down this end of it so that we have some variance in the size of the rocks. And then actually I'm going to increase this drastically for this experiment. So our grass field is now massive, and it's probably, the grass is probably too tall for a character, but it doesn't matter so that I can show you this. Maybe just shrink it down a little bit. So here we have a bunch of copies of this same rock. I'm going to take copies of those copies and make more copies, increase the size of those. Now we have a ton of variation in rock sizes. And then now when I let go of those rocks, all of them are highlighted. So when I scope in to one of these rocks, it really is. When I scope into one of these rocks and I manipulate their physics, oops, let's move this over here. And I manipulate their physics in real time, all of them will fall to the earth. And it didn't really work too well there. I'm going to go back. Hold on. And I know why it didn't work too well. It's simply because I didn't take them up high enough to bounce and stuff. So I'm going to grab all these rocks. I'm going to do exactly what I did before and make a bunch of copies of them. Kind of keep them all in a similar, I'm spinning. When you reach the 50% point of your spin, it'll snap back to the other end of it, of the spectrum. So I am going to add physics to all of these rocks right now and just let them fall to the earth naturally. And when you have a level that you've built with mountains and rolling hills and so on and so forth, you know what? Why am I talking? This is Dreams. I'm going to show you. I'm going to just add some shapes to this little sculpt we have down here. And I'm going to do it with a blend so it's a little more natural. Right? I'm just going to add some rolling hills to our world and maybe some dips and valleys. I'm showing you this because it really does, when you start to do this, the world building is fantastic. And now the rock idea that I had, I'm going to have to re-highlight these rocks, which can be kind of a pain when you have a ton of objects in a level. So make sure you're working on what you're working on in order. It's not too hard to go back and change things though. So I'm going to take these rocks and and I have 60 rocks highlighted here. So I'm actually going to make 180 of them. This will probably slow the game down a little bit while I have physics running, but it won't while the game is playing. That's still only increased the gameplay memory footprint by 1%. So now I'm going to go in while they're all highlighted and add physics, and it did not slow the game down somehow. And I'm just going to let those, oh, some of them are going to go off the edge. I didn't even think about that. I'm going to stop that because it starts to drive me crazy. Those objects will fall forever, and then it'll start to get too far from the center of your level, and the game will start to say, object deleted, object deleted. I'm so glad that you're excited to get it. I have been anticipating this game like no other game I've ever wanted in my life since the day they showed it at the PS4 reveal event, and I had to get my hands on it immediately. So I'm just gonna make some edges on this grassy knoll so that my rocks don't go wherever they want, because they're going to. Actually, I'm going to delete that shape and just copy this one to the other edges. The hype is real. The hype is so real. I'm just creating some basic edges here right now. For anybody who just joined, I'm doing a little physics experiment here, showing you guys a really, really quick and cool way to do world building that makes your world look eroded and natural. Oopsies. My rocks are now down in the grass here. I'm going to hide my grass real quickly here. I'll show you how I do that. I'm going to go to Tools, and then I'm just going to highlight it. And when I press circle, that will disappear. It still exists in the world. I just can't see it right now. I don't want to keep that hidden. I just wanted to grab my rocks really easily, and I had so much grass whipping around I wasn't going to be able to see it. Now, unhide all. Okay, now we have our world back. I'm going to exit out, highlight my rocks. Now I want to highlight every single one of these rocks so that when I scope in, whatever I'm doing applies to all of them. I'm going to make a bunch of copies of this rock. Increase the size on this one. What that does is make a range automatically, mathematically, of every size from your original object to the one that you've made a copy of in between. So every object will progressively get larger or smaller based on what you want. And then I'm going to take these 60 rocks and I'm going to increase those. I now have 180 rocks here. That increased the gameplay on my level by 2%, which is normal. I'm going to scope in with L1 and square and add physics to these rocks so that when they fall to the earth, they roll around as they naturally would. It makes like a quick erosion technique for you that saves you a ton of time on putting rocks in your level. Now, what I like to do is I don't want them to be movable anymore, so that when the player runs through these rocks, he or she is not kicking them all over the place. And then I actually like to remove the collidability on them in some instances for shorter rocks so that the player's not tripping up all over rocks. And then I take these rocks and I just drag them down by a small fraction of a centimeter. And now they are all implanted in the ground as though they eroded there naturally over time. And then I literally just built a playable world in Dreams in moments. And then I can just take a basic puppet. I'm on play mode right now, so he's going to fall to the earth as soon as I push play. Oh, he's falling too far, and it's killing him. Puppets automatically die if they fall a certain distance, which you can change. So I'm just going to put this puppet in this world. And now you can see there are my rocks. I did make them not collidable, as I showed you earlier, so they are absolutely 100% not physical in any way. That's entirely your choice. I thought they were much smaller than they are, so I can just... This will not... what I'm doing here does make a difference in the density of the character and the physics of the character. So you can't really build a world huge and then make it small to save on memory. See how he's like, I'm a huge, he's moving all super slow now. It's because he actually weighs probably in the millions of pounds. His jump is still only 1.9 feet because that's what I chose for his jump. And he's gigantic. So you can't build a huge world and then shrink it to save memory. The world eats whatever memory the world eats. I am going to show you a cool trick here. So I like these rocks a lot. Yes, I can make him push grass away. Hold on. Of course, no problem. So I like these rocks. All of these rocks are a single sculpt eating up the amount of graphics that they're eating up. You can see that I'm already at 17% graphics. And the reason for that is because when I go into that tool I showed earlier, so I go to tools, I go to sculpture detail, anything that turns, so the redder something is, the more graphics it's eating up. Watch the graphics meter here, the yellow bar, as I click. So I'm increasing the rock's graphical demand right now. But if I go to reduce, that's going to give it more of a worn down look for a rock anyway. Right? And you can do this if you want to. But now I'm down to 15%. So I just removed 2% of the graphics that I was eating up. I do believe that I removed the puppet out of my level. So the thing that's eating up all my graphics is actually the giant grassy knoll there. But you can continue to reduce sculpture detail on all of your sculptures as much as you want, as often as you want to reduce the graphical demand. And I have been at a point where I have 100% of the graphics eating up in a level, and I'll go through with that tool and just reduce the graphical detail in a few sculptures by a very minute amount, and I come back with like 57% of the graphics meter returned to me. So you can go through and reduce the detail on objects that you maybe won't get as close to. As you can see, as I increase the detail, or I'm sorry, the size, the detail of the object, the small details increase with it. So it won't eat up any more graphics or gameplay by increasing the size of it. See? But when you go to play it, those squares, those textures will be massive. So I'll delete that. I'm actually going to delete everything in here. No, you know what? I'm not going to delete everything in here. I'm going to delete all the rocks, not the grassy knoll. So if you double click X or cross, if you're from anywhere besides America, if you double click X or cross, it will highlight everything in the level, which will instantly give you a count of the amount of objects you've placed in a level. I have levels with 12 or 13,000 objects in them. I will show you an example of that, but I do want to show you guys the character pushing grass away real quick. And you know what? I am actually going to go to another player's dream for that, simply because I have not played with the force applier too much personally. And so I don't want to sit here and play trial and error with you guys. Low-lying foliage width. As you can see, there are just thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of, with culling, thousands and thousands and thousands of assets for players to use here. This was all created in the early access and the beta, which gratefully for people like myself who have spent a year in it already, very thankful for the fact that we got to keep all of our creations, because there was a chance. Let me see if I can find movable. No, React. Foliage. So hold on. You know what? I didn't want to do this today, but I am going to go into the story mode just super fast. I'm not going to show... Oh, I just leveled up. Hold on. everything you do in Dreams, from playing to creating to sharing to... I'm about to get like 15 trophies because I'm actually on level 159 and the final trophy is for level 30. So I'm going to get every single trophy leading up to the ranks. Okay, so I know of a level in the game itself that features foliage detection. I don't think I can... Hold on, I don't want to show you guys too much of the game here. I'm just going to jump in here real quickly. And I'll try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. I don't want to... not that it has like a hyper spoilable story, but I don't want to ruin anything for anyone. I don't want to ruin anyone's enjoyment. So this is actually a game built by Media Molecule. Obviously, because it's so gorgeous.
Come on, Debug. Let's find
Nope, this is not the level with foliage detection. Hold on, I will get there, I promise. And I will do so showing as little of the game as possible.
to just light up.
Everything in Dreams was made in Dreams. All of the game, the Media Molecule Dream, all of the Media Molecule... I'm sorry, all of the dreams in Arch Dream were made by Media Molecule using the same tools you'll get in Dreams. So you can see the grass growing over there. The reason that I brought us in here, Bill, Toretto Airbrush, was so that you could see the grass, the foliage react. And I knew Debug actually did react to the grass. You can see it moving around there. They do have it set rather low, so it just kind of does this, but you can actually set the physics as high as you want. So when you walk on the grass, it can flatten all the way to the surface of the ground for you. But yes, that is the foliage detection there. Don't want to ruin any of the story, so I'm going to stay out of story mode as much as possible. A great thing that people are starting to figure out in Dreams is custom animations for characters' runs. Although there were massive updates in the actual launch today, in terms of the way the characters move, the most impressive stuff is going to come out of those custom animations. I want to show you an example of one, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. Oh, cool. Now there's apparently... So this is the main screen. Each of these is... It works very, very much like Netflix, okay? So here's everything that it suggests, right? This is Media Molecule's stuff. I know, I can't understand how people do super realistic looking stuff. I'm actually going to show you this man, this streamer. His name is Disarmed. I'm sure you've probably seen him on Twitter or somewhere out in the universe out there. I'm going to show you because this man is so capable of creating realistic visuals in Dreams to the point that it's beyond my understanding of how. He was making the game Control. He was remaking some of the environments, some of the scenery in here. Look at this. And this is real time. This is something that, were this remixable, which many, many games and creations are on Dreams, were this remixable, I could literally just drop a puppet or any character I or anyone else has created into this and go explore it in 3 dimensions with all the lighting effects, shadow effects, and everything applied. However, as an art tool, you can see that I have no control over the camera right now, besides which scene is currently active. The camera is fixed, so the artist decided, as an artist does and can, to keep the player fixed in a specific location. That does allow you to manipulate things, as you know, to manipulate your viewpoint to hide things and do things the way you want. Yes, I have seen his breakfast, and it's ridiculous. This was one of the first things I actually ever saw in Dreams. This was created like day one of the beta. And the beta had, I'm not kidding you, 4 tutorials. So everything that was created in the beta, we just figured out. We just figured it all out in real time, on the fly. And even to make it even more difficult, when the beta first launched, we were not allowed to share. We weren't allowed to share creations with anybody that wasn't early access, and you could not share these creations out into the world using social media. We couldn't really talk about Dreams with each other. We were all bound by a non-disclosure agreement. And so what it seems is that nobody broke that non-disclosure agreement. And so how this man figured out how to make graphics like this in Dreams during the beta without any tutorials is far beyond me. But you can create... Yes, I will actually show you an example of an open world RPG I'm working on. It does not have any gameplay functionality built into it yet, so there's no random battles or enemies on the map. This is not my open world RPG. This is just an example of... And although these are not the most impressive graphics on Dreams, you can see that you can really get away with building everything from the extremely cartoony or 2D to hyper-realistic three-dimensional worlds that I would say rival some PS3 games graphically. Here is an example of some hyper-realistic graphics. Just real quickly before... Really? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Huh. What a coincidence. You can see people are getting so good at creating realistic graphics. This was actually a... there's what's called community jams. And every 11 days or something, they'll allow creators to build things and create things and then submit them to the world and allow the world to vote on whose is best. And it's really cool. It encourages you to really push yourself and try hard. I don't understand how this man did this. I am just in awe at this. I know there's a way to free cam here. Apparently you can't remember how to do it. He allowed a puppet to be injected into this scene. I don't know why. I will show you something that I actually never intend to release to the world. This is a personal pet project of mine. It's a action RPG game that I have been working on for almost 20 years. Writing, character designing, all that stuff. I don't intend to release it to the world because I'm not sure that Dreams is the right medium for me to release it in. But as I get better with things, as I get better with the game and the world and all of that, I might feel inspired to go back and finish it and release it. I don't know though. Let me just Pache Plateau. So you can create an open world RPG. I'm just going to show you a quick example of one that I am building right now. This is the first thing that I ever built in Dreams, ever. So please ignore the way the character runs and jumps, the way sound effects repeat, the way the grass is inconsistent in its size. Ignore all of that, but what I wanted to show you was that I still have 12% of the gameplay available on this map, which could easily be used to program logic for enemies or random battles or whatever else you decide to program into your game. All of the music and everything was created in Dreams. This character model was the first sculpt that I ever made. It's definitely terrible, but I was so proud of it at the time because it was my first experience with 3D sculpting. You can see that this is actually a very, very, very large map. It does take about, I would say, 45 minutes to span the entirety of this map running. Like I said, some of the grass is way too tall. A lot of sound effects missing. This rock it was my first creation, so it's not the best. It's certainly not the worst. And the reason that I'm showing this is because, Chirurgical's Waveform had asked, if you could build an open world RPG, and you absolutely can. And the great thing about Dreams is that although you couldn't build a game, say like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim in a single map, simply because the amount of detail that you would be able to put into that map would be too little for anyone's palette. What's cool is that you can link, you can put a dream, right? That's one set of levels or games. You can add 100 levels to every dream, and then you can add 100 dreams to a dream. So theoretically speaking, and this is according to a stream that Media Molecule themselves did, theoretically speaking, you could have a game that is 100 to the 100th power in size. That loads seamlessly in between. And so although, let me just show you real quickly around the back side of this giant rock face here, there's a cave. So basically what this is one of, let's say, 20 hubs in this RPG that I've built. Hubs just being self-explorable worlds, but that don't necessarily have the depth and discovery that other areas have. Again, please ignore the animations, as I was definitely learning how to animate when I built this. So this is basically a gigantic hub, and from this hub, and I'm just going to show you one of the areas you can enter into. I do not have the levels connected, so you won't actually see the connection occur, but I can show you an example of that proposed connection. These are supposed to be rocks. They're fluffy rocks. Again, first thing I ever built was learning. Don't want to go in and recreate it. So here we just have the entrance to a little cave here, and you can see along the bottom there, it says Pache Plateau, which is where I'm at. The Dungeons Feed, which is the name of the cave that I'll go into. So I'm just gonna start here and do a slow zoom out, so you guys can get, okay, again, here's the character, and this character, let me give you guys a scale reference. This character, there's a gadget in gameplay gear. Nope. Cameras and lighting. That's a ruler. That gives you the sense of scale in meters to what you're doing. So place that right about the character's feet. We have a character here who's like what? 5'4", maybe 5'5", whatever. So there you have the basic scale of the character, and I'm just gonna slowly zoom out here so you can see just how big a world you can build is. And again, this was the first thing I built. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing when I built this level. You can see all the seams on it are really bad. A lot of shortcuts. A lot of shortcuts were used to make this, because you can sculpt in VR. Media Molecule had said it will be available the day after release, but they did say that with quotes. I know it's a priority for them to get VR out there as quickly as possible. Please note that the functionality of VR will require, and this is per Media Molecule, the functionality of VR will require the game to run at 60 frames per second at all times, and you will have to play test your own level to guarantee this level of quality through and through before you can release it into the Dreamiverse, because VR titles in less than 60 frames per second will make the player puke, and we don't want that. So yes, there will be sculpting in VR and gameplay in VR. I don't know that VR will automatically be available for every single Dream out there that is 60 frames per second, or whether that has to be something specified before release. That would be my assumption, specification before release, simply because there's quality standards that the game has to pass. Whereas for other games, for every other Dream that you release, there are no quality standards. You can literally release a puppet that is straight from the menu out to the world as your creation, although all creations are marked with a tag, internal tag, that tells the Dreamiverse who originally created it. So nobody can really take credit for other people's creations, which is great. But you can release anything you want. There is no quality control over the creations. And in addition to that, I will say that in the story so far, I have heard several cuss words. So that is not off the table. They are not making this, they're not enforcing any sort of playability for age group specificity. There's cuss words in the actual game itself. So I am assuming cuss words, things like that will all be fine, as I have, of course, already seen, though not really adult material in the Dreamiverse. I have seen material that is geared more toward adults. So you can see this level is massive. Each of these little caves and areas links into another world that is just as large. This is a city that I have not finished building. You can see my graphics meter is at 94%, so I don't really have a ton of space left to do anything with. Oh wow, this was at 92%. So it looks like they tweaked the gameplay memory some, and allowed there to be even more complex worlds built. When I had originally built this gameplay meter was at 90-something%, and it's currently at 78, which basically means I can take any of these assets that I already have and copy them hundreds of more times without having an effect on my actual gameplay. See, that didn't even change the gameplay meter at all. So this is this giant map. I'm zooming away from the main character, who's sitting at the edge of this cave and is about 5.5 feet tall. I zoom off of that, and you can see that this world is massive, and has level links to many other worlds. So you can build really anything your heart desires, and build these massive worlds and levels and link them all together. And like I was saying earlier, if you have two levels linked, the next level link is already loading while you are playing the level you're playing at that moment. So when you step through the door to the next level, it loads instantaneously. I think the longest I've ever waited for an extremely graphically demanding level was 3 seconds for loading. So yeah, I am going to end the stream now. This was Dreams Launch Edition. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really enjoyed walking you through the creation tools, and giving you guys just heads up on anything you asked. I will be back for more at a later date, and I will probably be doing some level building. But as much as I enjoyed doing in real time what you guys asked, I will probably be doing more of that. It was a good time. And thanks for coming, everyone. See you soon.